Hello everyone, welcome back to What's All the Ruckus. I'm your host Charlie, and today we've got Ali Taha Brown from Jordan. So I'd just like to apologise for the lack of upload last week. It was because it was obviously the festive period, so I was a bit busy. I'm going to make it up to you lot though, and we're going to actually release a podcast on Sunday. So there'll be two this week and the episode next Tuesday. The Sunday one also includes Josh, who's not been on the pod for a while, so that's something to look forward to. But I hope everyone had a very good Christmas and New Year. But on to the podcast anyway. Ali Taha Brown from Jordan, also a board member at Southend United. For anyone who's interested in football, I certainly am, because my team Morecambe are in the same league as Southend. They actually beat us 3-0 earlier on in the season. But yeah, on a rugby sense, bit of a link to a previous episode. Ali played in Jordan's match against Bahrain, which was Bahrain's first ever international, and we spoke to Adam Wallace previously about rugby in Bahrain, so a couple of links there. But anyway, very interesting episode. He's got his own podcast too, which we'll plug in the episode itself. But yeah, really good speaker, and enjoyed speaking to Ali and learning plenty about Jordanian rugby, which hopefully you will as well. So on to the podcast now. So we've got Ali Taha Brown on the podcast today, plays for Jordan. Ali, thank you very much for joining me. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Charlie.
Yeah, and you are also a podcaster yourself, so we might as well start off. Do you want to plug your podcast and just talk a bit about it quickly?
Yeah, no, thanks very much. My podcast is called Taha Talks, a bit of a play on my last name, Taha Brown. But it's been going for maybe 3 years now, yeah, just over 3 years. I have to say, my uploading frequency is not what it once was. I haven't put a podcast up for months now, since March or April. But there is a reason behind that, which I can get into. But no, I've had so much experience being the interviewer. It's a bit daunting to be the interviewee, but this is a topic that I feel very comfortable and proud and happy to speak to. So I'm looking forward to giving my perspective on all things rugby and all things sport and rugby in particular.
Yeah, exactly. And just to start off, a similar question to what we ask most guests. How did you get into rugby? And yeah, what are your early memories of rugby?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak forever on this, but so I grew up in Hong Kong. I was born in Jordan, English father, Palestinian Jordanian mother. Grew up in Hong Kong from the age of like 3 or 4 months old. And from day one, huge sports fan. Sports. I'm a simple man. I got two passions: sports and politics. And but football was my initial true love, and it still is one of my big loves. But I played football and I played tennis a bit growing up. Dabbled in other sports. But then I started to watch rugby when I was 7 or 8 years old. And my parents had always pushed me to join a rugby club, and I kind of resisted it. I wanted to play football and didn't want to sacrifice other things. But eventually, it got to middle school when I was 10 or 11 years old. And all my friends had joined the D grade team, the middle school team for rugby at my school, Hong Kong International School. And it was just, I think everyone's got their intro to rugby story. I remember just playing my first game. And, my skills at football, I wasn't a very technical player. I was a center back, almost a Harry Maguire. Still am a Harry Maguire type player. Not great technically, but, would just throw myself at everything, which I found lended quite well to the sport of rugby. So stepped on the pitch, threw myself around. And from then on, I would just beg my mom to let me skip tennis and go and play rugby. And there was one memory in particular I remember where like we were at school and I was about to go play tennis and all my friends were going by, got in the rugby bus. And my mom was there and I begged her to let me skip tennis and go play rugby. And she acquiesced. And yeah, from then on, rugby slowly and surely became the dominant force in my life.
Nice. And I mean, what do you think it was initially about rugby that drew you in then and got you sort of ditching tennis to play the sport?
Yeah, I'd say that over time I've probably become better articulating what I love about rugby. I think initially it was just the physicality. It's I always tell people because rugby is so complicated with the rules, and I think most rugby players, even at the pro level, have a bit of confusion about some technicalities with the rules. It's just so confusing with ruck penalties and different interpretations and scrums, who knows. But the core of it, it's a very simple and a very, organic game. It's, I've got my group of guys, they've got their group of guys. I want to draw a line in the middle of this pitch, and I bet you that I can get my group of guys over that line more than you can get your group of guys over that line. It's mano a mano. It's the core of human nature. So I think that really appealed to me. And as I got older, I kind of realized that, you know, rugby is dangerous. You get stressed out before rugby games, and I something that I've gotten better at dealing with, and I can speak to that. But now I used to find it very stressful before rugby games, but there is no better feeling in the world um, than playing a full 80 minutes with your teammates, giving it everything, leaving nothing out there, and then sitting in the changing room after, bit dehydrated, a bit rocked, and having a beer with your teammates. It's just a feeling of accomplishment. The feeling, it's very rewarding. So, yeah, I've never derived a feeling like the feeling of playing a rugby match in any other sport that I've played in.
Mm. And just for context as well, what is your position? Because when you're talking about scrums and stuff, it doesn't sound
Yeah.
like you're too fond of them. So, yeah, what position do you
Well,
play?
I've grown to love the scrum. That's all. I think I played every position from wing to prop in my time, the heavier I've gone. But I started out playing as a back, center, and then 10. Um, and then my last year of high school, I played second row. I got to university in America. I was, light for the players out there, so I played in the centers again. But I always loved playing forward. So yeah, I'm a second row or a back row, and for my club here in London, I even play front row sometimes. So I love being part of the pack, even though my ears have not been as grateful. Yeah, it's just being part of the scrum, being part of the rolling maul, line out the set piece. That's the best place to play rugby. So I'd say my favorite place to play is six, blindside flanker, but I can fill in anywhere in the second row or back row.
Yeah. And obviously, I'd assume that you've always been aware of your Jordanian heritage, but at what point did you start to consider it as a potential route in the rugby sense? Because it wasn't too long ago that you started playing internationally for them, but I assume before then you were thinking about it as a possibility. So when did that sort of light bulb moment happen?
Yeah, so I'd say this is quite a long answer, so bear with me if that's okay. But
It's okay.
I'd say that my rugby story, and I'm 25 years old, so it's still ongoing, but so far it's been one of failure probably, and it's just marked by failure and persistence, and eventually getting to a place I'm quite proud of. But as I said earlier, rugby sports has always been my love. I remember being as young as I can remember and being convinced, that I would, win the World Cup for England. I see photos of Bobby Moore lifting the Jules Rimet Trophy in 1966, seeing Martin Johnson lift it in 2003, and I was convinced that I would be, the next England captain to win the World Cup. But eventually, your dreams meet realities. And I realized the older I got, 13, 14, like, hang on, if I'm going to be England captain, I have to be the best player in my team. And I can't even really get into my team for rugby. So like, this isn't going to work out. Um, so I kind of accepted, you accept it, you go to university. But I hit a growth spurt late into high school, carried on early into university. So I get to a university called Georgetown University, based in Washington, D.C., studied politics there. And this was playing rugby at Georgetown was a genuine life experience for me. And I want to give my coach at Georgetown, Arno van der Speck, a shout out because he was, he's been a seminal figure in my life. He believed in me through that experience. But I got there as a 180-pound freshman, and playing in the B side as a fly half as a center. Wanted to play in the forwards desperately, but wasn't big enough. And eventually, it was tough. Like the first couple of years, they were tough. Then COVID happens, and then during COVID, I get voted as captain of the team. This is in the middle of my third year, and being voted as captain of the rugby team at Georgetown was at that point the greatest honor that I ever felt. It was an amazing experience, and me and the officer board and the players and the team, we were a small group, but we helped lead this team that was on it was dying. We helped lead it to a 43 win and 5 loss season. Won conference championships, won I think 5 trophies, quarterfinals and nationals, 15s and sevens, and amazing year. And I personally had a lot of benefit from that year as well. I won I was playing second row and back row at this point. I won the MVP of my conference. I captained the All-Star team. And there was a game in the U.S. after I graduated. It was called the Collegiate Rugby Shield, and it was in Utah. This is in May or June of 2022. And then the concept was the top 50 players in the country, as voted by coaches and journalists or whatever. They all go to Utah and they play in this showcase match in front of all the Major League Rugby scouts. And you do not just that, but you do a week of training beforehand with 2 training sessions a day, S&C, like the whole professional experience. And you know, I get there and bear in mind that I kind of had accepted that I was going to fail, but when I was younger, my life goal was to be a professional athlete. I was convinced I would do it, and I actually got close to it at the end of university. But I had this really kind of, um, this moment where I realized the closer I got to becoming a pro athlete in the U.S., the more I kind of realized I didn't want to do it. Like that week in the U.S., I loved the game, but I hated the training. The
Mm.
best part about Georgetown and playing rugby there was that it was the club sport. It wasn't a train 2 hours per day and beat yourself up kind of deal. It was we're going to train our hardest on Tuesday, on Thursday, and we're going to go to the gym pretty much every day. We're going to make a go of this. We're also going to have a great time. We're going to have a great. We're going to have fun socially and everything. Um, and so it was a relaxing atmosphere, but the professional environment I found just did not suit me. I have other interests. I'm getting more into politics now, and I just realized then I didn't want to play rugby professionally. Anyways, I'm rambling a bit, but the ending of that story is that I played in the game, didn't get drafted in the Rugby Rugby draft, played a bit in the UK when I first moved here 3 years ago. Um, I kind of accepted that, I was done with rugby. My mom, bless her, she used to hate watching me play rugby. She would get scared of the injuries, the concussions, the various bits and pieces that I'd endured. And I remember telling her, a year after that game in Utah, I'm telling her like I saw one of my best friends, Jimmy Fitzpatrick, break his leg in front of me. I called my mom afterwards. I said, "Mom, I'm done. Like I'm done playing rugby. It's given me a lot, but I'm done." And I really thought I was done, and that was just over 2 years ago. Um, and then I went to Jordan that summer for a vacation with my family, and I was there. One of my friends from Georgetown, who was doing Arabic as a course that summer, his name is Aubrey Aird. He messaged me because he saw that I was in Jordan and said, let's come hang out with me. I'll show you around and meet my friends, whatever." To go hang out with him, he tells him I'm playing for a rugby club here that I've joined. It's called Citadel in Jordan. And I said, okay, cool. He said, come play with us. I said, Aubrey, I don't play anymore. And he's like, what? Like you were our captain, whatever, playing with us. And anyways, I got convinced into putting his like spare boots on and going for a run out. Enjoyed it. Found out that there were some Jordanian rugby players there. The standard was like good standard, but I knew that I fit into that national standard. And then I kind of put two and two together, realized that I was born in Jordan. I qualified to play rugby for Jordan. Um, and then I was like, I can play for the national team. And I kind of, I mulled on it for a couple of days, thought about it, realized that I did want to do it. And I remember telling my mom, who'd always pushed me to stop playing rugby. I was like, Mom, we're not going to like this, but I found out that I can play for Jordan rugby. And she looks at me and she goes, "You have to do it." And it was a really cool moment because Jordan's a country, and my family's not ethnically Jordan, my mother's side of the family, but for lots of people who are ethnically Palestinian, Jordan's given Palestinians a home. It's given, my grandmother lives there, my cousins live there. To play rugby for Jordan, it's a real sense of pride for me and my family. It means a lot, even though my initial intention and my dream was to play for England.
Mm.
To play out there and represent Jordan, it's amazing. And so, when I found that I was able to play for Jordan, I sent my highlight tape to the coach. He invited me out to the camp before the first Asia Rugby Sevens Trophy in Qatar 2 years ago. And the rest is history. I've been playing for, I've had, I think, 8 caps and 15s and sevens. It's been the best part of my year going to play rugby for Jordan. And I don't want to stop anytime soon. So I'm fully back in on rugby. But yeah, that's my story, Jordan.
No, that's a great story, and it's quite interesting, really, how Jordan effectively revitalized your love for the sport. Because, yeah, obviously, I didn't know that, but that's it's quite nice to hear, really, how being involved in the Jordan national team has, yeah, brought back your love for the sport. I like that.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's again, it's one of those things where you kind of you try to walk away, but you just keep coming back to it. And again, I stay true to my original thought, which is that there's not many better feelings in the world out there than playing a game of rugby with your teammates. And when it comes to, I think the purpose behind what you're playing for means a lot. When I was at Georgetown, when I was in my school in Hong Kong, you know, that feeling of you're playing alongside your best friends, you're playing for a university that you study at, a school that you study at, a higher purpose that you believe in terms of that university and that school. That was motivating. And then to play at international rugby, to play for the country of Jordan, it might not be the same stature as football in Jordan, where everyone at home is watching, but you're setting a country. This is real important stuff, and if that doesn't get you out of bed in the morning, then what does? So yeah, it's awesome. It's one of those things that I try not to be too reflective, try to stay in the moment. But I know that if I was to tell my 5, 6 year old self that you'd be playing for Jordan, have the experience of vice captaining Jordan, he'd be really happy.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I guess on a similar note to do with that, when you obviously when the light bulb moment happened and you realized you could play for Jordan, you were at the ability and stuff. Did you then have to sort of stop and think about the logistics of it because you're based in London, so it's obviously a long way to travel. So like when did that sort of stuff come in and how did all that work?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's one that, I'm lucky in that the companies that I've worked for and my family have been very supportive of it. Everyone that I've spoken to about it has recognized how cool this is and the importance of it to me. So, but it has taken, if I fly myself back with my family support to Jordan and London for tournaments and camps. In the last couple of years, I'd say that I probably have used the majority of my annual leave to go play rugby. So I often joke that, most people come back from their annual leave where I work with a suntan and relax and everything. And I come back with a black eye and in a walking boot. I mean, I remember one of our clients at the company I work for is based. They had an office in Teesside, and I played for Jordan in Bahrain in May of this year, and we got smashed by Bahrain. It was a great game, great experience, but in one of those where you're just like, oh, we got we got it handed to us today. It's a rugby, but I arrived back in London on a Monday with two black eyes and a walking boot, and then I go to the Teesside campus and meet the client, and they're like, "Who the hell? Like, is this a thug that we've hired?" So yeah, always provides for interesting conversations in and around London. Definitely a point of difference, but one that I'm proud of. I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Hmm. And on that Bahrain game, I'm interested to hear about your perspective because, as I've mentioned to you before off camera, we had Adam Wallace who played in that. I believe he played in that game, possibly No, he did play in that game. He captained Bahrain, I'm pretty sure. But so we've obviously had his perspective from the Bahrain side of things, being their first ever international. But from the Jordanian side of things, what was it like as a game and an experience?
Yeah, I'm sure it was a much better experience for him than it was for me. Um, but I mean, like these things are, you try and take the positive side of it, and it was an amazing, amazing experience. As you say, it was the first international game for Bahrain, and because of that, it was a great atmosphere. They hosted us in the rugby club. They were great to us, put us up in a very nice hotel. We got the full welcome to the ground treatment, everyone clapping us in. It was cool. It felt like a good international fixture of the anthems. Um, from what I remember of that game itself, I remember it being incredibly humid, which we weren't prepared for. I think the first 20 minutes we kind of stuck at them quite well. But in the last 20 minutes of each half, they kind of put it on us, and they were used to that humidity, and we weren't. Their scrum overpowered us, I think. And that kind of going to Jordan, I'm keen to highlight the state of Jordan rugby right now. The scrum in particular was weak for us, and that's a related to the overall picture of Jordan rugby, which is that you've got a group of really, really highly committed, athletic, talented people. I mean, the captain, Ismail Jambak, the coach, Kuka Hamoka, the presidency of Jordan Rugby, Aziz. Like, these guys are guys that live and breathe rugby. They love this sport. Like no one else I know, really. The passion for rugby is insane. It makes me feel like rugby is just, one of the things I do. Um, but there's no substitute for college game experience, and there's no domestic league really in Jordan right now. The team hasn't really got a full field, so it's just tough. And the best experience for these guys in the sevens and 15s is to play those live matches and tournaments. So it's one of those things where you really feel like Jordan, if you're looking at it in the stock market, it's a buy low stock because um, if these guys and the team and my team, if we get the resources that basic resources, field space, you know, consistent competition in the region and nationally, these guys can become a real force. Just the progress that I've seen in the last 2 to 3 years has been tremendous. Going from the first tournament I played in Qatar in 2023, we were struggling and we got into the lower competition to just over a year later in Nepal playing in the Asian Rugby Sevens Trophy, giving Kazakhstan a good game, beating Pakistan, giving India a good game, giving Philippines a good game. These are countries that would have smoked us a year ago. And just this last month, I couldn't make this tournament, but the team played in Oman for the Asia Rugby Sevens Trophy, and they competed really hard, finished sixth place, beat Iran in a really close match. We lost to the previous couple of years, and ultimately losing to Bahrain in the plate final in a close match. But my real these guys they're athletic, they're tough as hell. These guys are tough as hell, and if they get the support that they need, in my view, we can compete with the likes of Bahrain.
Mm. And one of the areas of support is obviously money. That goes without saying. But another area that always strikes me about Asia specifically is on the 15s level. There's not too much. There's not too many organized fixtures. This year there was only the qualification tournament for the World Cup, which had what, four nations, and then there was a playoff to get into that between two nations. So it's like that's quite striking. And then that's so many nations that are left out at 15s level. Is that something you're aware of, and is that something that's a difficulty for Jordanian rugby, and I guess for you personally as well?
100% and 100%. I mean, going back to just, I think people who play rugby kind of get it, but um, when you play week in, week out, you know, not only is your body adjusted to the physicality of a rugby game, but you train your skills and you own your skills at the in live contact in the most intense high stakes situations. People are coming at you trying to kill you, not kill you, but trying to hit you hard. Let's say you're a fly half, for example. If you're running a back play in a live training drill, you know you can go through the motions a bit. As much as you try to replicate an in-game situation, the second side 10 who's going to be running at you in that drill doesn't want to try to hurt you. They don't want to try to injure their star player. They're not going to try and, to bump tackle you. But fast forward to a live game, that guy's coming for you, right? They're gonna cheat on the offside line. They're gonna come on your inside shoulder. They're gonna smash you, and that causes mistakes at the 15s level. So when I play frequently in London, but when I play 15s games for Jordan, like the skill level is there, the fitness is there, the passion, the want, all those things are like proper extent of there. I mean, they're so clear, but it's just those situations where you're not used to that pressure being there on the defensive line. What do you do when the ball's kicked up at you and you don't take a mark and you're around 22? How do you respond to that? It's those adversity moments during a game that you don't build that, and there's no substitute for that match experience. And I'm a big cricket fan. Look at what's happening in the Ashes right now, and all the controversy around England's lack of preparation. You can beat Ben Stokes and the players. And look, they're fit, right? They're cardio fit, but there's a difference between being cardio fit and being match fit. And so, long story short, yes, I completely agree. Um, there is an issue, and I can see it firsthand with Jordan. I'm not surprised with Asia rugby in general around the availability of fixtures to play. And I see that as a real opportunity for someone who cares about the game of rugby, for a company that sees the commercial potential of rugby to invest in that, to create competitions, create leagues within countries like Jordan, between countries in the Middle East, for opportunities for players to play more frequently. There is talk, I have heard talk. I don't want to, officially confirm. There is talk about, tournaments being set up between Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, Qatar, countries like this, and Bahrain on an annual basis that are commercially backed. That would be amazing for each country. But I think it's something that we really should back. I don't want to get too meta about this, but you look at the sport of rugby, and I firmly believe that if everyone in this world played rugby, the world would be a better place. And people would hear that quote and laugh at it. And I completely expect that, and that's priced in. But we live in a world that's getting increasingly dangerous, increasingly volatile is the word everyone uses, lots of conflicts, and people need things to unify around. People need things that they can, look at someone and say, I don't care what you believe in, what skin color you are, what your political views are. If we're on the same team and you're going to put your body on the line for me, I'll be your best friend. And that for me is rugby. That's what I've always felt with rugby. And I play for a club in London called Belsize Park, and I should play more. I apologize to anyone who's listening who plays for Belsize Park. It's just tough with the whole Southend commitments and politics and everything. But those guys, that's a great club in London. And whenever I play a game for them, there are guys there that I don't know. I've never spoken to before. And we play a game together for the full 80. And the guy next to me, I see him put his body on the line for me. I do the same for him. And after that full 80, you've got a connection with that person. And my firm belief is that, rugby is an underplayed sport globally. I think the more people that play rugby, you buy into the ethos of rugby, which is to be inclusive, not in the politicized term of it, but, anyone who wants to play can play. That's important. It builds toughness. Alice Ganger said recently, which I agree with, that society has become too soft and people look at rugby as a vehicle to solve that. It breeds toughness. It breeds togetherness. And these are all universally agreeable values I think we should get behind. So, I think there's a socially moralistic incentive to invest in rugby, but I also think there could be a commercial incentive too. And let's look at the context of rugby, right? It was only just professionalized in 1987 globally. It's a very young game in professional standards. I think that there is real potential there. I think it's struggled internationally, and different leagues being proposed and everything. But I'm very bullish on rugby. I always will be, because I think that in the world that we live in, rugby is a sport and an ethos and a culture that I think will be increasingly attractive to people.
Yeah, definitely. And on a similar note, to do with the sort of structures and everything within Asia Rugby that relates to playing matches and the importance of that, something that's came up recently is that in East Asia, the Unions Cup, as it's called, they're expanding, and effectively they're almost becoming, I guess, the de facto organization for the East of Asia countries. So is that something that you'd potentially welcome for the Middle East and the west of Asia, I guess, having a more specific regional organization than just Asia Rugby to organize games, etc., etc.
Yeah, so the Union Cup, is that like a kind of a Six Nations type thing that organizes what, like Hong Kong and
Pretty
Korea
much,
and
yeah,
Japan?
and it's got
Yeah.
it's more than Hong Kong, I would say. It's sort of lesser nations. So it's places like the Philippines, um, Indonesia, Malaysia, and basically they're expanding to almost include pretty much all of Southeast Asia, most of East Asia in general.
Yeah. I mean, look, I work in my day job when I'm not playing rugby and doing other things is in communications and corporate advisory. So I want to stress that my views do not represent the views of the Jordanian Rugby Federation and the CEO and everything. So I don't want to say anything that might step on the toes of Asia Rugby and jeopardize those relationships. But I think, yeah, I'm very open to seeing potential solutions to rectify the issues that we've spoken about. So if a competition, for example, between Middle Eastern countries does generate interest, does generate consistent competition and matches between these countries, then in theory, I'd be all for that. Um, I have my desires that, and the Jordan Rugby, I know has its desires for what we want on the global annual schedule. And I don't think we're too fussed about the way in which they're achieved. So yeah, in theory, I'd be very supportive of a format that gives us consistent game time against high quality opposition.
Mm. And online it said that Jordan have been World Rugby members since, I believe, 2024, which is around the same time that you started playing. Was that something that is that just a coincidence or are the two related?
No, it's all me, man. I mean, no, it's complete coincidence. Yeah, I think that I it was me who found Jordan Rugby. Like I don't think Jordan Rugby had in that moment mounted a real kind of external push to get people who, like me, had Jordanian heritage but lived overseas to come play for Jordan Rugby. We've got a youth player. His name is Omar Haddad, who is based in California but has Jordanian heritage. He's a great player. He's been playing for us for maybe a year or so now. But what I think that push to become a formally recognized member is indicative of is a real push led by the Jordanian rugby leadership um, to professionalize the Jordan rugby operation. And you can see that through the social media of Jordan rugby. I always say like our rugby might not be the world leading, but our social media team is incredible. And some of the content they put out on Instagram is is really high level. It's really very high engagements and helps generate sponsorships with companies in Jordan like Zuzu. So yeah, I think that the membership of World Rugby is a really important step for Jordan. But I'm not attuned to the dynamics of how that came about in terms of
Mm.
leadership. Um, yeah.
Yeah. So it just so happened that they happened at the same time. By the way, I wasn't suggesting that you joining Jordan gave them the
I
final
don't mind
push
that
that they needed.
suggestion though. I don't mind that suggestion. I mean,
It
let's
could
take
have.
that narrative and run with it.
Exactly. And you mentioned social media. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but is there a Jordan player who has a massive social media following? I can't remember if it's Jordan or if it's a different nation. So please do correct me if I'm wrong. But I feel like I remember seeing someone with about maybe 200K or something on Instagram, something like pretty crazy like that.
Don't know if it's this guy. I don't think it is. It might be another country. I feel bad if I'm neglecting someone who is big. But there
Yeah,
is one player we have. His name is Zaid Al Kalani. And I'm telling you, this guy, and I meant to mention him earlier, this guy, he's the best example I have of Gordon Rugby being underutilized because This guy is a physical and athletic freak, and he's an
Mm.
amazing guy. He's got his own business that he's starting. Or everyone listening, go check it out. He does, um, I'm not sure how to describe it, but it's like these creams and deodorants and everything. He's into the grooming stuff, but he he's a physical freak. I think he benches like I'm not even joking. He benches like 4.5 plates aside for reps. And he's got great hands, he's got great cardio. He's a great player, got good rugby IQ as well. This guy, if he was born and bred in the US or the UK, I'm convinced he'd be snapped up for a pro team like very early on. It's
Mm.
just that he's in Jordan and there isn't the infrastructure in Jordan right now to support athletes like him. And that isn't, I want to stress, that isn't for lack of effort, because the effort and the desire is there. And these guys like work so hard. They really do. And the coach, I can't stress enough, Cookie, he's a really amazing coach. He whenever he speaks, and I've been playing rugby for a long time. He teaches me a lot every single time. This guy lives and breathes the sport of rugby. It's just look at the RFU and the infrastructure we have here in the UK. What we have in Jordan is miles away from that. Again, we haven't even got a full-size rugby pitch to play on in Jordan. So the fact that we've done what we've done this so far was a real testament to that hard work. But to get to that next level and build people like Zoe, who is this physical freak, and other guys as well, you need to have some institutional support and as we've discussed, potentially outside support as well in building these competitions.
Mm. And do you think that if that happens, then we will see Jordan potentially compete like at the top level of Asia? Like where do you think it could lead to? What is the potential within Jordan?
Yeah, the sky's the limit. I really think that the goal of the team is to win the Asia Rugby Sevens. So the way it works is, and I'm sure you know this, you have the top tier of Asian rugby competing in the sevens, tournament, and there are teams in that get to the Olympics. And Jordan currently are in that second tier of Asian rugby, where if you win that tier, you get into that top tier. Um, the current goal of Jordan Rugby is to win at second tier Asian rugby and get to a position where we do compete for those Olympic places. I don't think we're far off. I really don't. And you look at the progress that I've seen in the last couple of years with the team. I think if we continue on that trajectory, we'll get to a very competitive place. I mean, just to put it in example of my own position within that team, right? Like I joined the team just over 2 years ago, as I said, and that first tournament I played in Qatar, I was probably one of the best players, if not the player of our tournament from Jordan. And 2 years later, on the seven side, it's the same group of players, right? And I'm the same person, but I now struggle to get into that team, and I struggle to make an impact in that team to the degree where I'm kind of looking at it and saying like, you know, I'm not fussed about my own role in it. I care about Jordan Rugby. I'm more of a 15 guy than a sevens guy. Like I don't think that I'm helping the sevens team right now because I don't think I'm as good as these guys. So, and again, they're the same guys, the same coach, but it's just a couple years more of experience, and that's only on 3 or 4 tournaments per year. So again, if you multiply that by a factor of 5 or 6, I think these guys have the potential to become really high class operators. You
Mm.
look at a guy, I mentioned someone else, Omar Hajabi. This guy, he's a warrior, and he's someone who's got a natural instinct for the game of rugby. I think someone like that, if you played week in, week out, you could become a serious player in Asia rugby.
Mm. Yeah, and I feel obliged to ask this because it's something we ask so many guests who are
Yeah.
related to sevens and 15s. Do you think sevens is the best avenue for Jordan to go down in terms of growing the game? Because obviously it's a more easily accessible route for people to get into the sport, or and I guess can success in sevens be emulated in 15s? Like, yeah. What are your thoughts on sevens development and all of that sort of things?
Yeah, I think it's the age-old argument, right? Where I've got a firm belief that 15's rugby is real rugby, and that's the true heart of the sport, and I always believe that. But in terms of the growth of the game, in terms of commercial value, I do think sevens makes the most sense to prioritize. And this is an ongoing conversation within Jordan Rugby. Um, but as we all know, sevens is an Olympic sport. When it comes to Jordan, that unlocks access to funding, is my understanding from the federation, the sports federation. So I think if you're a country that is looking to grow your rugby game, then I think it makes sense to invest in sevens. But I don't. My whole thing with this is I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. Like I think any good sevens player should be a great 15s player and vice versa, unless you're in the front row of 15s. But even in the front row of 15s, like I think a hooker can make a good sevens forward. They're just a big prop if you can't. Um, but let's look at the if you look at the history of England sevens, for example, from the late '90s to late 2000s. I mean, there were some guys who had illustrious careers in England 15 setup who started off in the sevens. And I
Mm.
seen like James Haskell, for example, was a sevens player originally. And there are other examples that I'm kind of blanking on right now. But it was
Danny
traditionally the
Care, I
kind of
believe.
Danny Care doesn't surprise me. I think Josh Lucy maybe. Um, so it's there's no reason to differentiate sevens and 15s. I think both can operate in tandem. But yeah, I'm short. I'm probably a 15s guy. I do like playing sevens. I like the freedom it gives me, and I think that sevens makes a strong investment case. But I think the two can operate in tandem, and I think they're also. My sense is that things are changing a bit in terms of global interest in sports. Where you look at cricket again, and there was this real interest in T20, and that still is there. But
Mm.
I think there's kind of a reaction to that in the opposite way now, where I think you look at the strength of the Ashes in terms of TV ratings and podcast growth. I think more and more people now are kind of paying attention to the longer form um, of the game. So yeah, I think rugby is rugby, sevens or 15s. I love tens as well. I'm just focused on the sport.
Mm. I think you're right about cricket, especially, and I think in the UK it's potentially a reaction even to the 100 because obviously
Mm.
that's got a lot of it's got a lot of supporters, but it's also got a lot of backlash from traditional cricket fans mostly. So yeah, I think that's a fair comparison to make. Yeah. And just to finish off, because I'm conscious of time, but I could probably talk to you for about an hour longer, much longer. Just to finish off, I think it's best to look ahead to the future and what is next for you and what is potentially next for Jordanian rugby.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's been great to talk to you as well. And as I said to you before we started recording, I am such a huge fan of this initiative. I think it's great, and I hope people listen to it and enjoy it as well. So thank you for reaching out and interviewing me. It's been a great platform for me to speak about my love for rugby and my experiences in rugby. In terms of the future, on a personal level, I've got a lot going on. So I have, as I said to you, on this quasi secondment next year for work in the Middle East and the US. But I'm also running for office in politics at the same time as well. So those are my two passions, sports and politics. And I'm also going to be playing for Jordan Rugby in the spring of next year, hopefully with 15. So keep myself busy, trying to stay fit during that Christmas period, trying to gain match fitness too by playing for the Al Khobar Rugby Club in Saudi Arabia while I'm out there. And in terms for Jordan Rugby, more importantly, I think that the signs are very positive. Um, again, it's just difficult to get the requisite practice time and match time. But the guys are, I'm in the WhatsApp chat and they're driving 3.5 hours out to Aqaba to play 15s against an inter squad scrimmage. So, again, that want is there, that desire is there. And I think we've got some fun things planned in this next year on the 15s and 7 side. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm really grateful. I'm blessed. I really am blessed to have the opportunity to play for Jordan, to have all these things going on. And I miss playing for Jordan. I haven't played since May, so I can't wait to put that jersey back on and make a better go of it than we had against Bahrain.
Mm. Brilliant. Ali, like I said, I could speak to you for a very, very long time, but we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. Really, really interesting to hear about your career, your life, and of course, Jordanian rugby. We didn't even particularly touch on the fact that you're a board member at Southend United, who are in the same league, as I've mentioned, and as you know, as my team, Morecambe. So, yeah, best of luck with everything, though. It sounds like you've got a lot going on. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on and for your time.
Thank you, Charlie, and I'll be sure to ping you when Southend smash Morecambe on February 14th next year. So it's been awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, cheers.